Can I ask you a question?
Always.
What's your favorite comedy?
No Country for Old Men.
Nice. You know, I actually have that on my list of comedies here for this very conversation. No Country for Old Men is one of my favorite comedies.
It's great. It's hilarious.
Well, yeah, not a traditional comedy, but I think that's typically the kind of comedy that I like. There are a few traditional comedies that I would put among my favorites. Home Alone is actually one of my favorite comedies. I'd put that up there. Dumb and Dumber, that one's pure nostalgia for me. And What About Bob is also pretty high up there.
I have to share What About Bob. I think that's probably on my list.
Yeah.
I mean, a bunch on the top. I think probably our listeners won't be surprised at many of them because I think they've probably come up before.
My Cousin Vinny.
My Cousin Vinny's always up there. I love Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Groundhog Day.
Yeah, I like Groundhog Day. I like Napoleon Dynamite too, actually.
It's a good movie. It's a good movie. Now, as far as Coen brothers go, I think my favorite outright comedy of theirs is Burn After Reading.
Yeah.
A lot of people, even Coen brothers fans, don't love that movie.
Yeah.
I love that movie.
I'm not a huge fan of Burn After Reading. Coen brothers in general are just kind of hit or miss with me. I do like a lot of their big hitters. Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, Fargo, Big Lebowski, I think is hilarious. And A Serious Man is probably the sleeper for me with the Coen brothers. I really enjoy
like A Serious
Man. The thing I like about the Coen brothers is that their writing for comedy isn't the traditional writing for comedy. You go to a movie starring Adam Sandler or something, someone like that, Adam Sandler or Adam Sandler adjacent, and I get the sense the people writing the script, Rob Schneider movies as well. We've got The Animal, Hot Girl. Does he turn into something else? Or the South Park episode, he turns into a carrot. I typically feel like the people writing these films are people who write jokes. They're used to being funny, but they're not
writer's room sort of writers.
Correct. Yeah. And I don't think they quite have the same handle on how to tell a story. And so often for me, comedy films just fall short at the end. You've got like a few scenes towards the beginning, especially in the first half. Those are usually where the funniest moments are. And then it just falls off the rail by the end because I don't think that these writers often know how to finish a story, how to, do setup and payoff. They know how to tell do funny scenes in a movie.
It's really hard for straight comedy to sit squarely in like celebrated cinema, right? For that reason.
Well, and going back to No Country for Old Men, I actually do think that's one of my favorite comedies in terms of like comedic writing. I think the reason for that is that when I like comedy in cinema, it's sprinkled in. It's usually in a dramatic movie and the comedy is all over the place, sort of just balancing out how heavy the drama gets. You get a real serious moment.
Comic relief, appropriately used comic relief is really some of the greatest comedy, right? And when your characters are downtrodden, you can make that story really funny because it taps into the human condition in ways that outright comedies don't.
Yeah. My favorite comedy of all time is probably The Death of Stalin, which I believe you're also a fan of. And this gets into also, like, I think the kind of comedies I like are often dark.
This is really sort of a conversation about satire, and I think we'll get there after this break.
All right. We'll see you right on the other side of this.
I can't wait. Listeners near and far, we are coming back to you from the new Frontlines. I'm Joey Z. With me, Jimmy Dantes. Jimmy, how do you do?
I'm very happy to be here.
I can say the same, and it's a good feeling to have the airwaves back in our control.
Also, since our last episode, since our last show, we have managed to get power up at the cabin.
Wahoo!
We managed to find some solar cells.
You may have heard us talking about it last time you were able to tune in. And I feel like while we were on the air there, we actually came up with a whole bunch of really good ideas. We're really sort of like lightning in a bottle.
Yeah.
Which incidentally is exactly how we have gotten power to our cabin. Lightning in a bottle, friends.
Yeah. Power's up. We are now watching 3 VHS tapes that we have.
Over and over and over again.
Has been on repeat.
We've watched The English Patient several times. We said we wouldn't, and we've watched it like 6 times.
I wasn't paying attention. I know nothing about that film.
Sure you weren't.
Every time I get...
Jimmy wasn't paying attention.
I want to point out, too, I'm the kind of person who would like The English Patient, and I still don't like it.
So you were paying attention.
Yeah. Anyway, let's move past that. Also been watching Masks over and over again. Episode.
It's it is
that's Masks, the episode from Star Trek: The Next Generation, not The Mask,
and not Mask.
Yes,
with Cher.
Yeah, we're talking about Masks, the Star Trek episode from season 7.
And I would much rather have a copy of Mask and be watching that over and over again. Hell, I'd rather have a copy of Beaches and be watching that over and over again.
I'd rather watch The Mask on repeat than watch The English Patient.
Also,
what are we talking about today?
I just feel like we've been carrying on here. We've been doing pretty well, but now that we have the power on, sometimes we've got the lights on late, and it's gotten a little spooky.
Yeah, we actually... Because we've been watching so much Home Alone, things have been getting a little scary around here. I don't know if Jerry Novak has been sending his little spies or whatever, his ninjas out into the woods after us.
It's creepy.
But maybe he has, and Home Alone has become more of an instruction manual for home security than anything for us.
It's been incredibly helpful.
It's still honestly a source of entertainment. If you want to learn how to secure your own home, that's a fun way to do it. Watch Home Alone over and over again.
I'll tell you what is really good, honestly, for cabin security.
Yeah.
Tar is a big one.
Yeah. I got Mr. Producer good with the blowtorch the other day.
You sure did. You sure did. You really seared him.
Improv first aid right there. He's doing fine.
Yeah, he's better. He's much better now. What we didn't learn from Home Alone, but I think has been useful, at least for my peace of mind, is the tiger pit. There's a lot of digging.
Yeah.
There's a whole lot of digging.
Yeah. Still got to find the tiger.
Yeah. How does that work though?
We'll catch one in the wild.
Are you supposed we have the 12-foot pit dug, and then I don't know. Are you supposed to catch the tiger in the pit and then leave the tiger in the pit?
Yeah.
So that the next person who falls in gets eaten by the tiger?
Yeah. I don't know how we're going to keep it fed either.
Not well.
Yeah.
But we got to keep it hungry. Anyway, we're doing fine. We're doing really good. I would say really good.
Yeah.
Really,
I tell you what,
really good.
Today I am ready to laugh about something. And you know what's going to make me laugh? Macaulay Culkin. What a funny guy.
That's almost a who.
Oh, yeah.
Even more than a what.
Yeah. A who.
A who.
Who is Macaulay Culkin is going to make me laugh.
Why?
I don't know. What for?
And how many question words can we pose?
Macaulay Culkin, what do you know about the guy?
I mean, Mac. What can you say? What can you say that folks don't already know? Mac, we recently met Mac. We talked to Mac before we got run out of town. We ran into Mac and had some good old times with him. I don't know that he heard us necessarily, but we were in the same room.
We were in the audience, way in the back. Probably
was the same
before we
room.
got escorted out for shouting too much.
Well, I think he probably heard that.
Yeah.
But Mac, you got to love him. I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of Mac.
Yeah. He is named after a British historian, Thomas Babington Macaulay. That's where his first name comes from.
Wow, this is fascinating.
Yeah.
I've always kind of wondered about the Culkins' names.
Macaulay in particular, that's one you don't hear. I haven't really heard anybody.
You hear it once.
Yeah.
Macaulay Culkin.
Yeah.
Tell me that name again.
Thomas Babington Macaulay. Yeah.
Incredible.
And as we know, he goes by Mac because Macaulay is a mouthful. And if you had to say that every time you addressed him. So, henceforth, we're going to refer to Macaulay Culkin as Mac.
Yeah.
He grew up in New York City, was raised Roman Catholic, started acting at the age of 4 in theater. Then he did some TV, and his first film was Rocket Gibraltar, starring Burt Lancaster, released in 1988.
he was a kid.
He was a really, really small guy in that film.
He was a little guy.
Yeah, not too old. He's kind of the co-star of that film. I haven't seen it, but he's right on the front cover, and the description of it says that it's about Burt Lancaster's character sort of bonding with his young grandson. Yeah, I guess it caught the attention of a lot of people because his film career kind of just started blowing up after that. The one he did, what was See You in the Morning, starring Jeff Bridges and Alice Krige. I believe this was a romantic comedy or something. Alice Krige, you may know her from First Contact. She plays the Borg Queen.
Aha. And Jeff Bridges, you may know from Starman.
Yeah. Well, he got an Oscar nomination for it.
He did.
Yeah. Only Oscar-nominated John Carpenter film. Shame on you, Hollywood.
Amen. John Carpenter just got his Hollywood Star Walk of Fame.
Yeah.
Give me a break.
Better late than never, I guess.
I guess.
Shortly after those films, he caught the attention of a guy that me and you both know of pretty well.
Little old feller who
screenwriter,
goes by
director,
the old name of
John Hughes.
Jonathan Remington Hughes.
Is that his middle name?
Must be.
His first name's not Jonathan.
I said it.
That's something that frustrates me with John Wick. There's this guy in there that sounds really eloquent, and he keeps referring to John Wick as Jonathan. John. That's not short for Jonathan.
John with an H is a Christian name.
Yeah.
Jonathan without an H is traditionally a more Jewish name.
Mm-hmm.
However, I do know in real life a Johannathan. A John-athan.
It is known to happen sometimes.
It's known to happen.
Probably
but it's an
not.
Abomination of nature.
I don't want to see it. No.
Yeah.
Caught the attention of John Hughes for his 1989 film Uncle Buck, starring John Candy. And this, I don't know.
Jonathan Candy.
This sort of felt like it really was Macaulay's breakout role because, he's not the star of the show in this one, but he's got that same spark that he has from Home Alone.
Scenes here.
Like some of the best moments in Uncle Buck are when Macaulay shows up, and his back and forth with both Gabby Hoffman and John Candy. I mean, it's just great. Like, you can tell right from that film that this kid is just comfortable on screen. He knows how to just be a kid in a way that people believe and really enjoy.
He's very precocious, and he's just the right age too, where he's still a real little kid.
Yep.
But he's just old enough to give the adults some flack.
Yeah, and it's this movie that got him in the door with John Hughes. The next big movie he did was
The next big movie he did will reveal right after this break.
Oh, sorry.
This house is so full of people. It makes me sick. When I grow up and get married, I'm living alone. Did you hear me? I'm living alone. I'm living alone.
Little known fact, as far as I'm aware, Chris Columbus initially didn't want to go for Macaulay Culkin as Kevin. When Chris Columbus was going through casting the role of Kevin, John Hughes suggested Macaulay Mac because he worked with him on Uncle Buck, and he thought he was really great. And Chris Columbus thought, I don't want to just go with the first kid just because John liked him. I want to cast a bunch of other kids. And I guess he did this with thousands of kids, and none of them had that same quality that he was looking for in Macaulay. And he ended up going back to him after actually trying to cast 2,000 or whatever other kids.
27,000 children.
27,000 children were rejected.
Yep.
And Mac got the job. Right man for the job, if you ask me.
Same.
Yeah.
Well, that really set him up for a career. I mean, after that, he did the majority of his movies that you may know him from outside of Home Alone really happened over the course of the next 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, and importantly, too, most child actors aren't the lead. I mean, if it's an ensemble, maybe you get a Sandlot or something along those lines, or a Mighty Ducks, but usually there isn't one kid in the lead because that's a lot to put like an entire film on the shoulders of a kid actor.
Right.
And most of Mac's films are about him. He's the main character.
That's true.
My Girl is an exception. He's a side character in that. I know you're not a big fan of it, but I actually liked it. Something you may enjoy, though, is that you get to the end, and spoiler alert here, if you didn't know, Mac dies in this movie. The character he plays dies in this movie. He's stung by bees near the end. And we've talked about this scene before in the sense that you watched it and were just disgusted by it. And I get to the end and I start feeling myself being choked up by it. And then all of a sudden I hear your voice and it ruined the scene for me. And so I'm having these two conflicting.
He needs his glasses. He can't see without his glasses.
That's it. Especially, it's that scene where he said he can't see without his glasses, and I was like, oh man, that's really sad. Oh, but Joe ruined it for me, and then I like while I was starting to tear up about it, I started laughing. It was a really sick experience, and you did that to me.
Ah, you're so welcome. That's so kind of you to say.
Overall, I really did like My Girl. I thought it was a pretty good film. It's not Macaulay's film. He's it doesn't really demand too much from him. He's sort of just a quiet, timid little kid. The movie is really Anna Klumsky's.
Yes.
And I ended up liking it. And Mac was pretty good in it too, but not the star of the show.
What about, have you ever seen a little film with Ted Danson and Saul Rubinek called Getting Even with Dad?
I have seen Getting Even with Dad.
What do you think about that one?
I kind of like it. I don't think it's a very good film. Mm-hmm. This one's directed by Howard Deutsch, who is one of John Hughes' go-to directors for his own scripts. This one wasn't written by John Hughes, though.
Right.
It's a fun film. I like the stuff between Ted Danson and Macaulay. Their relationship is interesting. So basically, Ted Danson is a robber or whatever, a high-end thief. What does he steal in those? Some like valuable coins or something, like golden doubloons that he gets from
it's a bunch of collectible coins, and some old rich lady died and her estate wasn't settled, and so the state just took the coins and then they're going to auction them off.
Yeah.
And so Ted Danson and his cronies.
Ted Danson plays an ex-con.
Yeah. They pull a little heist. Mm-hmm. They get these coins. It's one, capital last, capital big, capital score.
Yep.
Registered trademark.
Yep. This is when they're going to get out of the game. As soon as they finish this heist, they're done. They're good and clean. Retired. Yep.
They're going straight.
Yeah. Do want to point out, okay, so Ted Danson plays an ex-con who he served time and is now a cake baker in San Francisco. And somehow he's still like doing the robbery thing. That's a pretty good job to have as
He seems to be really stable. Here's the weird thing about this movie.
He enjoys the job.
He enjoys the job. He takes pride in it. Mm-hmm. He is like a skilled tradesman, right? And he's got a really nice apartment.
Yeah.
In San Francisco.
Yep.
It seems like he is really like the poster man for how an ex-con can turn their life around and reintegrate into society and find a stable life post-prison.
Yes.
And yet, here comes Mac.
The crux of the plot, the day he's going to do the robbery, his son, Mac, shows up on the door and he's got to take care of him.
It turns out, it's this big twist. It turns out his son is legendary film actor Macaulay Culkin.
Yes. Comes to live with Ted Danson because he was a big fan of Cheers.
Yep.
That's why he was also a guest star on Frasier, if you don't remember that episode.
Right. He was on one episode of Frasier.
Yep.
Also, he was really hopeful that his dad would get a role in Becker.
Yeah. Didn't happen. Oh, well.
Never happened.
Yeah. So the story is basically Ted Danson is trying to pawn off these coins, auction them off, and build a relationship with his son over the course of a few days.
He's juggling a lot.
Mac finds those coins and hides them and says, you got to be a dad to me for a few days, and you got to pretend to like it.
That's
and then the entire rest of the movie is basically Ted Danson and his two little cronies, including Saul Rubinek, chasing him and Mac around to amusement parks and aquariums and whatever else. Just having a good time so that Mac will finally give them back these coins. They can sell them. Yeah. Not a great movie, but I tell you what, that is one of my favorite Mac performances. Out of all the films that I've seen of his, there are a few that I don't like as much, or I'm not as, impressed as I normally am with him. My Girl being one of them. It's just a subdued role that doesn't require much.
Yeah.
And this one is different. I actually think Mac brings a lot of charm to this role, and I really like him. I like his chemistry with Ted Danson. All that stuff is great. I could lose everything with Saul Rubinek and him and the partner trying to find stuff. That's
the goofy stuff, the slapstick stuff.
Yeah, he probably could have cut all that stuff out. Wouldn't have lost much.
I feel like it's a movie that's really well devised. It doesn't take a lot of risks. It really sticks within sort of like the structure of like a good A plot, B plot. It doesn't throw us for any unusual twists and turns.
Yeah.
It sticks to the formula, and I think it delivers.
I hadn't really seen Getting Even with Dad until just recently, just a few months back. But the only scene that I had actually watched beforehand was where he's living with Ted Danson, and he's gone out and replaced Ted Danson's toothbrush because it was matted. And Ted Danson starts brushing with it, and he's like, "What's wrong with this toothbrush? It's cutting my mouth." And Macaulay Culkin's like, "You're supposed to change your toothbrush every 3 months." That's the only scene I had seen from that movie, and it stuck in my head so much so that I have actually changed my toothbrush every 3 months from having just seen that one scene from this movie.
And in doing so, Mac somehow continued to do the bidding of the American Dental Association. And as a result, your oral hygiene is better for it.
Macaulay Culkin teaching you how to take care of your teeth one film at a time.
What do you think about The Good Son?
Ooh, The Good Son. That one I remember being like, I saw it when I was really young. Actually, I saw it when it was the perfect age to see it. You're like 11 or 12 years old. This is the rated R film made for you. There's not any nudity in it. There is a little bit of profanity, but it's still like soft R-ish enough. But it's got enough of that adult content in it that you're like, oh, this is sort of like Demolition Man, Like I'm seeing a rated R film catered to me.
Exactly. A rated R film made for kids.
Yeah, I remember loving it at the time. I tell you what, when I saw it as an adult, I was a little let down.
Speaking of child stardom, who are some of the child stars who come to mind for you? When we think about like, where are they now? Or what does it mean to be a child star? Where does your head go?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the first child stars I was aware of was the Olsen twins. I saw Full House when I was a very young kid. Didn't realize that the Olsen twins were twins. I thought it was just one person. So that was my first TV crush, was the Olsen twins, when I thought they were one person.
Yeah.
So yeah, when I think of child stars, it's that. Macaulay Culkin is, kind of the prime example. You've also got Elijah Wood.
Yep.
He was in a lot of stuff. Huckleberry Finn, I think, was the first film I saw him in. I actually really liked that movie, and I think I revisited it a few years back, and I still thought it was pretty good. He's also Frodo Baggins in The Lord of the Rings, and I've often actually
but he's an adult at that point.
He is an adult
once he's in that film. I think that's something else to talk about.
Yeah,
here,
that's true.
Right?
Yeah,
there are various trajectories for child stars. It's interesting to think about. I mean, you talk about the Olsen twins, and as far as I understand nowadays, now their elder sister, who was not a big star when they were, now has an acting career of her own. That's interesting.
Yeah.
The twins themselves, I think, are out of the business, and they're now like fashion designers.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean,
they're socialites.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But you also have your Elijah Woods. I would also, right alongside Elijah Wood, I would put Leonardo DiCaprio. Right?
Yep.
It seems sort of rare, but you've got the child stars who were well known as kids. They had substantial roles and things as children. They were good. They had good screen presence. They had good instincts as actors as kids.
Yeah.
But you have these sort of a minority of child actors who then really grow into it and become like celebrated screen actors as adults.
Yeah, you've got like your Ethan Hawke and your Drew Barrymore who grow up to be adults in the industry. DiCaprio's a great example of that. You feel like a lot of grown child actors have different perspectives on the career in general. Some of them seem to resent the fact that they were put to work from such an early age. And others seem to have embraced it. This has just been part of their life.
Right.
And they didn't have terrible experiences like many of the others probably did. I don't know, in general, like just working children, there's a little bit of morality that comes. Macaulay Culkin's been working since he was 4 years old. And I get the sense that he sort of resents that a little bit because his childhood was kind of taken away from him.
Right. Absolutely. We were talking recently about, and of course we were just talking about his filmography, but you and I were talking recently off the air about that time when Mac hosted Saturday Night Live.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And outside of all the movie, it's like, a movie is a complete package, right? It's a finished product. Mm-hmm. The child is commodified, but you're just really seeing the end result, right? And you can it's like you don't see how the sausage is made. Yeah. But there is something strange and revealing to see Mac at the age of 11 hosting Saturday Night Live, right? And it really it shines this light on what it must have been like to be a little kid with all of this professional pressure. Yeah. Level of professional pressure that virtually no one in their adulthood will ever know. Yeah. And this feeling at the age of 8 or 10 or 12.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't imagine. I mean, it does seem like a lot of pressure. And if it works out for you, I don't know, there are a lot of people who just don't have any sympathy for you because your parents put you to work when you were very young so that when you became 20 or whatever, when you had access to your trust fund, hopefully your career will have been successful enough that maybe you won't even have to work the rest of your life. Right. And that is the case for some child actors, but there's a cost that comes with it. You are putting these kids in a working environment with other adults who are like have all of their own problems on their own, and this is something they like can't even necessarily keep from all of their coworkers. You're exposing kids to some pretty heavy stuff from a young age, and that's a risk with it, and sometimes it doesn't turn out the way that you'd want it to. I mean, you get a split, sometimes the kids will have a rough patch and then they'll pull out of it, but sometimes it doesn't go so well either. And I don't know, the idea of exposing your kid to that kind of trajectory seems pretty scary.
So when a child actor has a rough patch, right? Maybe in like their young adulthood or their teens or something like that, there's so much scrutiny. There's so much publicity and visibility into it. And I think, like you're saying, you have the general public who has this sort of fascination with child stardom. They consume it.
Or celebrity in general.
Celebrity in general, right? And fame and wealth. And there's, I think, like an inherent baked in jealousy that goes with the fascination to compound on the stress on a child who's having this burnout from this experience. You then have society's sort of like ambivalence and even, some Schadenfreude.
Yeah, there's sort of this like self-fulfilling prophecy to it. It's like, of course that kid was going to end up being a junkie down the line or whatever. Right. Just like really cynical, unkind thoughts, sort of hoping for their downfall. Right. And then when it happens, you're like, they celebrate it. And then that becomes part of their tabloids. There's an entire industry that's devoted to that kind of stuff. I can't imagine what that's like, though, when I go back and think about my teenage years and trying to figure out the world for the first time in your life. And
if the world had been watching you the entire time.
Yeah, you're just making mistake after mistake because that's what being a child and being a teenager is about. Only you're on a public stage. And when you make a mistake, the entire world sees it and they judge you forever because of it. That's a lot of pressure to put on a kid. And particularly a kid in Macaulay Culkin's position where he's starring in movies. Like, he is the lead. There are adults on this movie who are making less than him.
Going back to hosting Saturday Night Live, it's a reminder of what a cultural phenomenon Home Alone was. Yes. It wasn't a kid's movie. Yeah. It was a movie everybody saw. In this moment in time, Macaulay Culkin, a 10-year-old, was the most famous person on Earth.
Yeah. it did end up working out for him in the end, I think, but there was a lot of baggage that he had to deal with as a result of it.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of rough patch, or I think he had a rough patch.
Yeah, I don't think it's enviable.
Yeah, I don't think I would want that. I don't think I would want the world knowing who I was when I was 13 or 16 years old.
Right.
Not that I'm even ashamed of who I was when I was then. I was just a kid. I didn't know any better back then.
And obviously the world knows who we are now, but we're both in our late 60s.
Yeah.
So
And
we can make these decisions for ourselves.
Exactly.
I think there's a couple of former child actors who fall into this very rare category, and I really want to point them out. One, well, I'll name both of them. Mason Gamble, who you may know.
Dennis the Menace. Another John Hughes script.
That's right. He was also in, he also played Jason Schwartzman's little buddy in Rushmore.
Ah, yes.
And Peter Ostrom. Does that name ring a bell?
It does not.
He played Charlie Bucket in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
Oh, yes.
Right? These two here. And this is overlooking any other lots and lots of stars, of child stars who had, you know, various degrees of successes, failures, triumphs, and tragedies, right? These two gentlemen in particular, I am fascinated with these two because Mason Gamble went on to get his PhD, and he's now a marine biologist. And similarly, Peter Ostrom, Charlie Bucket, was in exactly one movie. It was Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. He'd been noticed. He was in like regional theater. He got noticed by talent agents. Then he got asked to go and read for this film. Ultimately, he got chosen for it. And the way that he describes it was like going on study abroad.
Yeah.
He was a kid. He went to Munich.
Yeah.
He said that Gene Wilder was eccentric but very kind and recognized that he'd never been in a movie and sort of like showed him the ropes.
Yeah.
He and Jack Albertson were sort of like father figures to him.
That's great.
And then he never did another movie again. He completely denied, like he spent his young adulthood, I guess he even like didn't even tell his future wife that he'd been in this movie until he was about to meet her parents.
That's
and
hilarious.
was like, hey, I got to tell you this thing about my past. And he went on to become a veterinarian. And I think he just retired last year, but he's just been like a cow and horse veterinarian for his entire career. These sorts of things really fascinate me.
That's probably the best way to do it too. You have just one great experience. You get to be a star once, and then you just fade into obscurity, and that's it. You had your one thing.
And pursue a real career, right? Go and have another life. You're not chasing that dream. You're not going, oh, yeah, you know, at least I still have some money. Maybe my career isn't as good as it used to be. No, you just went on and lived an adult life after that.
You got your golden ticket.
I've got a golden twinkle in my eye.
I wash my hair with the Don't Formula shampoo and use cream rinse for that Just Wash shine. I can't seem to find my toothbrush, so I'll pick one up when I go out today. Other than that, I'm in good shape.
What were you saying about The Good Son?
It was, so The Good Son is Mac's foray into adult films. I think this is the only rated R film he starred in as a child. No, maybe Jacob's Ladder's rated R as well.
Yeah, but he didn't star in it.
That's true. Okay. The only film that he starred in, I think he was top billed on The Good Son as well. Little known fact, too, as far as I'm aware, him being in The Good Son was tied to his contract for Home Alone 2. His dad he found out that this movie was being made. It was a dark film starring kids. And he said, I think Mac is going to be perfect for that. And you're going to make him the star of it if you want him to star in Home Alone 2. And it ended up working. Not like they had to twist Fox's arm. Like, oh yeah, I don't know if I want Macaulay Culkin in my film. And then, he ended up, I think the reason his dad wanted him to do that was because it was just a more adult, darker role. They wanted to show what he was capable. He wanted to show what he was capable of or whatever. And that came out in 93. I think they shot that right after Home Alone 2. Also starring Elijah Wood, another child star. You like The Good Son?
Well, it's been a while since I've seen it. I remember being disappointed once I finally saw it. I really, really wanted to see it when it came out because I was a kid.
The first time I saw it, I was 11, and I loved it at the time. It was like, this is a rated R film made for kids.
Yes, I really wish it's one of my. It's one of my great regrets in life that I didn't get to see that at the right age. I probably didn't see it until I was like 22 or so, at which point I was like, this movie's pretty poor.
I rewatched it maybe 5 or 10 years ago, and I remember thinking, oh, this was a lot cooler when I was a kid.
Yeah.
You know? I think it's just, hearing Macaulay Culkin swear and, murder people and things.
Yeah.
It's pretty jarring, and
Now, of course, there is the infamous film that was the last film that Mac did before his basically decade hiatus.
Yeah, he retired after this one.
And this is, of course,
Richie Rich,
starring Jonathan Larroquette. Yes.
That's a weird name. Like, when I look at it on paper, I thought it was going to... Larroquette could be French. Yeah. Anyway, that film, not very good. I watched that one actually recently. Not a fan of Richie Rich. And I tell you what, this is the era of Mac's career where I think he was telling his dad, listen, I'm getting a little burnt out here. I don't really want to be in movies anymore. I kind of just want to do my own thing for a while. And as far as I can tell, his dad was basically, yeah, whatever, we'll think about that.
We'll cross that bridge.
Yeah. And he made this movie the same year he made The Page Master. And these are two films where, I don't know, they're the spark that Mac normally gives you in his performance, the spark that he even has in Getting Even with Dad, it's just gone. It's not there anymore. In Page Master, it doesn't demand much of him, but it just sort of feels like he's delivering lines, doing the routine. His heart's just not in it. The scripts also weren't nearly as good. When you think about like his most charming roles, they were John Hughes scripts, and John Hughes, I think, knows how to write kids well. And that's something I don't know, like that's something to take into account when you think of Macaulay Culkin's career. He actually was fortunate enough to be the kid playing these roles that John Hughes had written. And so the kids do really fly off the page in the way that they don't in The Page Master or Richie Rich. Yeah.
You had mentioned something the other day about Richie Rich and his performance in that, and not just his performance in it, but that really that film is, it feels like a marketing scheme.
It is
that's built around Mac.
Yes, it's banking on his name.
It's banking on his name, but the movie is real. The character of Richie Rich, as the movie's written, is sort of an irrelevant character.
He's so hollow. He feels like he facilitates interactions between other characters who, the butler, the bad guy, the other kids in the neighborhood that he's trying to get to know. They all sort of have personalities, but for the most part, it really does feel like, I don't know, Mac is just sort of a prop in that film. They got his name. I do think it was a good casting. He looks like, when I think of Richie Rich, Mac seems to fit the bill, but I don't know. They just didn't write a script that really did much for him.
And Mac does a fine job in it. Yes. I mean, I do think that, like you say, the spark is gone. You don't see the fire in his eyes. He doesn't care that he's there, but the role doesn't demand it.
No.
There's just nothing. The character himself has very little agency.
Yeah.
It's just this world that's revolving around him, and it's all about the sort of cloak and dagger that's happening between the characters who are his parents and the villain, John Larroquette, and then the adults who sort of back up Richie Rich.
There's a really weird scene towards the beginning of the film where they're sort of just showing how rich he is. The one scene that really stuck with me when I was a kid is when they go into his basement and all the neighborhood kids are there too, and he's got a McDonald's down there.
Yeah.
Just like a full service McDonald's in his basement. I remember when I was a kid, I get rich, that's what I'm going to do. I want to build a McDonald's in my basement.
That was really shameless brand tie-in too, because I do recall that there were McDonald's commercials that were being aired at the same time as that film was being released.
Yeah.
That tied into the Richie Rich thing.
The scene that really struck me, though, is earlier on in the film, he's getting his morning workout, his exercise or whatever, and they fly in Claudia Schiffer, who is like wearing skin tight, like exercise pants and exercising in front of Macaulay Culkin. And the scene is just very much like, oh, look how hard my life is. I'm a 14-year-old boy and I got to stare at Claudia Schiffer's ass while I work out.
Yeah, they really, they sexualize Mac in a weird way. He's still a kid. There's also
really
this scene,
weird.
I don't know if you remember it, but like there's a, you know, like magazine covers flying into the foreground.
Yeah.
And there's a People magazine that shows Richie Rich and it calls him the sexiest man alive.
Yeah.
And in the movie, he's supposed to be 12.
Yes.
And it really, I mean, talk about like commodifying children. It's almost this like unintentional meta narrative on the things that we're talking about, like the hardships of being a famous child and a child actor. And in this way, even though this movie is pretty lame, it does shine this weird light on the reality that Mac is the real person is simultaneously living.
Yeah.
Where he's like, I'm all burned out.
Yeah.
I just want to be a kid. I just want to play games with these other kids and have a regular life.
Mm-hmm.
And the movie's kind of all about how like there are all of these unfair trials that this richest kid alive has to face. It's kind of curious.
Yeah, it does feel like it runs parallel with Mac's life. I think it's very interesting that that happened to be his last film as a child star, because as I was watching it, I didn't love it, but I definitely felt like this is where Mac is at in his life right now. He's seeing what other kids are doing, just being normal and doing fun stuff, going to school, and just not working all the time. On top of that, not being the center of attention, not walking into a room and everyone there knowing you. And then on top of that, when you're a celebrity, a lot of your relationships become transactional, and you're a kid and there are just all of these people throwing themselves at you, trying to get something from you. That's, I don't know, I could see someone burning out on that pretty quick. And I kind of get why Mac walked away after that.
Big time. I think if you're watching movies for the pure love of cinema, Richie Rich is one you can skip. Mm-hmm. But if you're interested in Mac's filmography, then it's a really important addition to the canon, because I think it actually helps really understand where he was at in his life at the time.
And if you want a better alternative to Richie Rich, you don't feel like watching it, Blank Check starring Brian Bonsall, another child actor.
He's another interesting one. He's now a Bitcoin billionaire, and he ran for president in 2016.
That wasn't Brian Bonsall. That was another kid, wasn't it?
You're right. That was First Kid. So, I mean, I feel like we learned a lot, talking about child actors. And speaking of child actors falling into wells, it makes me think of The Ring.
Yeah.
I wonder whatever happened to her.
She went on to go play in Lilo and Stitch. She was the voice of the kid who buddies up with the alien.
That's great.
I don't remember.
And now you know the rest of the story.
Yeah.
Did you ever listen to Paul Harvey?
I did, yeah. Actually, when you said that rung a bell in my mind. I didn't know the name.
The rest of the story.
And now you know the rest of the story.
If anyone was ever more famous on the radio than us, it was Paul Harvey.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think, like, I want to say I'm really glad that you kept all those micro machines from your childhood, because those feel like they're really helping protect the cabin.
Yeah, yeah.
Quite a bit.
Hang on to those, sprinkle those right in front of the door. Then we just got kind of offensive nails sticking up around the house. So, like, anybody comes close, they're going to get tetanus before they get us.
Right. Tetanus, quick acting tetanus.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're trying to make the best of it, but things are pretty scary out here, and we got to keep things safe.
A big one for me, honestly, you can overlook it in Home Alone, but it's the tripwire.
Yeah.
Once I ran those tripwires and I went twang, and I noticed how tight it was, and I learned that from Mac. And I feel a lot better now.
Speaking of child actors, you remember when somebody tried to kill the president for Jodie Foster?
Yeah.
That gets me to thinking, if somebody manages to kill the two of us, is it going to be considered assassination or murder? Like, is there a level of fame you have to reach before it's assassination?
Yeah, I think we're at assassination level.
Nice.
I think we're at assassination level.
That's going to be on our tombstone if we die. That's pretty great. Anybody who comes to our grave is going to be like, that's a hell of a grave. I wish I got assassinated.
Though if it's Jerry Novak, is it assassination or is it straight up murder?
Yeah.
Is he assassinating us because we're famous? I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I feel like we're pretty safe where we are right now.
Yeah, especially
I'm still
with all
having
these traps.
nightmares every night, but the traps I think are going to work well.
I've begun wetting the bed again, so that hasn't been too much fun.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I wondered what was going on.
yeah, okay.
There.
Well, next subject. Let's just get out of here.
Yeah. I feel like we should probably try to find our way to town,
Yeah.
get a little bit more food.
We'll send Mr. Producer to get us some supplies. I'm just getting so tired of pork rinds. It's just not doing it for me anymore. And packaged pickles.
We want to thank everybody. Thank you as always, but really, truly more than ever for tuning in, keeping us sane, giving us a reason to live and to continue on this long road home alone. Please, any words from the front line, let us know, and we will be back with you as soon as is humanly possible, which I'm going to estimate is probably in about a month.
Oh, what was that?
I think it was just the rain.
Yeah. We're still safe for now.
Thanks, Jimmy.
See you next month.
Broadcast live from our studio in
Undisclosed location.
The Long Road Home Alone is hosted by Jimmy Dantes and Joey Z and produced by Pat Muldoon. Be sure to tune in next time. Don't forget your reading glasses and keep the change, you filthy animals.